doing another video that cannot wait until the end of April 2023. The title is Transgenderism and my view on it, which could be political. So for example, this drink looks pink, but it has yellow and ginger in it. I'm in a bright yellow t-shirt today. So the Bible clearly says in the book of holy books of the Torah, which is relevant for today because God is eternal and lives forever. Woe, warning to those that call evil good and good evil. As for the New Testament, from a religious perspective, it clearly says, do not argue with the wicked, do not waste your effort, your time, or any power that you have on the wicked. Allow the bad to do bad and the good to do good. Do not interfere because they're separate peoples. Jesus also says, give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar. In other words, the capitalists, the colonialists, the supremists, the superiority peoples, the 4 or 5 different classes of them, a class war and statuses, and the imperialists. So let them have what they want. Give to them what belongs to them, their point of view, their worldly standards, and give to God what belongs to God. And God's people, they have different standards. Jesus says, my kingdom is not of this kingdom, is not of this world also. So we cannot ignore these three major warnings from the Bible that clearly differentiate between God's people and the non-God's people, between the religious and the non-religious. There's also false religion. There's also false friendship. There's also false professionalism. So these 3 warnings determine the dedication and the devotion to search for these falsehoods and also stay clear from them. So in other words, transgenderism is a false female or a false male, and it's their choice what gender they choose. So from a Christian perspective, as I myself a devout Christian, what is wrong in their ideal world is that they would impose or force their beliefs onto everybody else who is so-called normal and their rights. And that's where it goes wrong. That's where it's this is where the corrupt government will pursue and persist that transgenderism is somehow going to mix in. So you're going to mix in the condemned with the non-condemned, which is witchcraft and wizardry. We should somehow normalize that which is abnormal. We should somehow call good evil good, and God is the devil and the devil is God. The disguise of God wearing Satan's masks. So I don't believe that God disguised God's self. I believe that God it says God does not put people to the test. God does not tempt anybody. But it is our fault if we do not recognize God. It's our fault as a human race if we don't recognize Jesus. That Jesus is unrecognizable because of our sin. Even after Jesus resurrected from the dead, the sinners did not recognize Jesus. His own friends and family did not recognize him until they realized the importance of true intimacy, that is truly knowing each other, not only knowing each other by a number, So this is where false professionalism comes in, that you're only known as a number, your NHS, your hospital number, or your work number. You're not known as a person, which is a sin and a deliberate evil against God. So people are not going to recognize Jesus and God as a result of their sin. So they cannot blame God and say God has disguised himself and God is testing people. No, God gave Jesus, the human race, particularly God's people, the authority and the power to test. It's our job to test, because we're closer to humanity than God is. God is above humanity, right? But God is also a judge. So God can return and recoil the guilt onto anyone through a judgment. So God is a judge. God knows everything that we have done, whether it is good or evil. So that does not require any testing, because God knows. It's obvious. If you see a faulty car or anything that has been broken or damaged, you know that it is because of evil. God has not made anything defaulted or imperfect. So God instantly knows the difference between good and evil. Even that which is invisible, God can say, spot on, this is evil. God can spot the difference, whereas human beings cannot. That's why it says, do not judge anybody. Do not judge anyone unless you have a very close relationship with God and you're at an advanced level with God. Then you can be a judge. So it's very dangerous when we judge without God's consent and permission, because most people cannot tell the difference. Most people cannot identify evil. I mean, I knew straight away there's certain demons and certain evils in certain people, but I didn't shut him off. We fly towards the storm, not away from the storm. That's the difference between God's people who are at an advanced level, as Moses was, compared to those who are at a basic level with God. So returning to the subject of their own class, this is what gets on my nerves. I have no problem. I'm not annoyed or irritated that an LGBTQ would have their own toilets. It doesn't bother me. Let them have their own toilets. Let them have their own sign on the door of the bathroom that says LGBTQ. Let them. Why not? But what's wrong with it is when the corrupt government says that they have to be mixed in and go into the female's bathroom and say this is a transgender individual, or to go into the male's bathroom and say this is no longer a female, it's a male transgender individual. That's what's wrong with it. So we, as God's people, stand against that. Also, the fact that they want to teach, let them. If certain groups of people want to have teachers and want to have an LGBT school and want to adopt children for LGBT families, let them. For God's sake, let them. Don't try to stop hell. Don't try to stop evil people by forcing them through politics or through religion to stop doing their evil. Actually, the more freedom you give them to do evil, the more likely they're going to stop and come to their senses and say, oh, this is not right, I've tried it, I've been there and done that, I've had my own school, I've had my own adoption services, I had my own hospital for the LGBTQ, I had my own services, I had this and that, and then they come to their own senses just to realise that they are wicked and wrong and they need Jesus to stop being what they are, because it made them very mentally and physically sick. Others will continue being as what they are, that nothing will stop them. So that's the clash. That's my criticism of the politics and of the religious, that attempt to stop them and disobey Jesus. That clearly says, let them get on with it, because when at the end of when we come to the end of time, and when God is going to give a free earth a free new earth and a free new design of the human body, the same as Jesus, the body that never dies, then God will expel all evil and there will be no evil human beings on earth anymore. No more child abusers, no more LGBTQ. So it's God's job, not your job, to permanently remove evils. So even their children can be wicked and wrong. Let them. It's their children, but not when it comes to meddling in with the normal society and forcing normal families who are not LGBTQ to have their children adopted by the LGBTQ. Then in that case, we have to stop them and say, no, you've gone too far. It's gone too far. So we have our own consciousness, like irritating little dogs that bite us at our feet. That's how a conscience should be. You have a little dog, compare a big dog. It would bite you, you know it's coming for you. But when you have a little dog, it's more irritating and annoying. You cannot always stop it because it's that much smaller. So anything that is that much smaller in hell, it's easier for that smaller thing to squeeze into gaps and get away with their evil behavior. For example, what annoys me is that LGBTQ have more freedoms to be racist, for example, and for example, they criticize me as a crippled, disabled woman who had my operation cancelled by the government, and they told lies about my weight. I wasn't that much overweight at that 4 years ago, and they denied me my surgery for my spine. And yet, if it was LGBTQ, which is a different class of people, they're not denied. They're gone into the hospital services straight away. So when we mix the LGBTQ services with the normal hospitals, that's when it's evil. That's when it's wrong. And when you mix the belief that small-breasted women are more attractive and more beautiful compared to big-breasted women who have breastfed their babies for 2.5 years, nearly 3 years, as in my case, and saying that one boob goes there and the other boob goes over there, and that it's lopsided and lopped. It's wrong, because I'm also suffering from being poisoned and tortured. My belly's too big, and so it's going to separate my breasts, that they go from one side to the other because of my stomach being there and separating my breasts. So they're saying that it's more attractive to have smaller boobs that looks like a man's boob compared to a bigger boobs, which is very strange. And they're drifting away as drifters, floating away like polystyrene that can never sink, because they would get away with wherever it wants to go. And this has to be regulated, it has to be monitored, that something that is abnormal is not going to be mixed with the normal thing. And I would scream to high heaven, not because I am triggered, not because I am activated to scream, because something has scared me. No, they're not scaring me. They're annoying me. They irritate me because they think they have more political and human rights compared to normal people. And that's why I want them all to drop dead. But it's not my job to kill them. It's God's job to kill them, right? And so the point I'm trying to say is that I'm annoyed at them. Who wouldn't be annoyed when you are going to be tortured and then have hairs on my chin because of hormone imbalance, forcing me to go on hormone pills and things can actually do more damage to my health than anything else. I'd rather do it naturally. My periods were missing for 6 to 9 years as a result of psychiatric interventions and mental health, forcing me, imposing their wrong diagnosis, which was a paranoid person. I don't believe I am a paranoid person. I don't believe I'm schizophrenic because my house is a mess. That's because I'm severely disabled. I don't believe that my thoughts are in disorder. So they target normal people for abuse, particularly religious people who are Christians for abuse, or they don't like the way I look like because I don't have light hair and light eyes. So this is swirling around in my life for 20 to 30 years of being severely, extremely character assassinated and targeted for abuse by some fat cat businessman that is earning lots of money on my suffering through their systemic abuse, which has been around for more than 2,000 years. It's a slavery. It's a slave master. So they actually hate. This is what's wrong with it. This is what's wrong with politics. This is what's wrong with government. This is what's wrong with our religious people when they allow these corrupt individuals that should be in prison for forcing that which is normal to be abnormal and that which is abnormal to be normal. In closing, so this is the stumbling block for everybody. It's not only me screaming against them. I'm saying let them get on with everything that they want. Give them everything that they want. Don't try to stop them. But at the same time, you must stop them when they try and mix it up. And so I have a chain here on my arm because it helps me to tie in my alarm system in case I fall over, or if I lift something too heavy and then my back snaps. And I have very limited support. I have been socially isolated and targeted for abuse by my bullies for 30 years. I suffer from severe stress and being exhausted, and I suffer a lot as my consequence of government intervention that see me only as a number rather than a person. And they're playing around with my life, and they're saying, we know that there's nothing you can do, Miss Nikolic. You are powerless. You are hopeless. You don't have your ability because you're unemployed and crippled to reclaim your human rights, because in England we're going to remove your human rights anyway and make you the poorest category. So they're saying that we cannot capture their memory for evil, which is mixing up mixing up abnormal to normal. They're untouchable, and unholdable. We cannot grasp the magnitude, the huge misinformation, the huge things that they have stolen from me, my ideas, and to swap it for a demon, and then make a business out of it, and make a giant out of it, which is Goliath. It is the same as Goliath versus David battle, the giant. Let me go back to my drink. So there's also the aspect of Mother Nature. They're saying that Mother Earth is an evil thing, and Mother Nature is an evil thing. And hold a thought, is Mother Nature an evil thing? Didn't God create nature to help us and heal us? But there's devils everywhere. According to Elijah, he said one storm was for the devil in nature and one storm was for God. So the devil can also use nature. The devil can use a rock. The devil can use a stick. The devil can use a human body to point out firmly the devil's attempt to mix that which is abnormal with normal. And I cannot be more honest than I am now about transgenderism. So telling anyone it's okay, you can be in a very subtle way, as a subtle bully, particularly normal children, that we're going to mix the condemned with those that God wants to cure. is an offence. It's more than an offence. It is a war cry against them. When they say it's okay, you can choose your own gender very quietly, and at age 15 or younger even, you can choose your own gender. That's okay for the families that accepted LGBTQ, and they're talking about their own children. So let them have their own schools. Don't mix them in with the normal schools. If it wants to be a teacher, LGBT, lesbian, why do you mix them in the normal school? That's my point. I wouldn't be so angry if they were not so mixed. It's not okay. Because we have to differentiate between God's people and not God's people. Right? So to suggest that it is perfectly okay and appropriate to say, quite honestly, whatever the plan is for the LGBT, the normal people that are not LGBT should accept it. So the business of Bud's can of drink. So they had their own motivation, they had their own logo, they had their own business agenda, which was not for the general public use. And that's okay. Let them for their social construct. Don't attempt to block them. So if you have a group of teenagers that have chosen the LGBT community for their rebellious acts, let them. If they want to be the scum of society and the slime of society, let them, no problem. You can't do it. But when it comes to a teenager stealing my car, stealing my home, stealing my social construct because they have more political power, then it's not okay. It's not okay. Expect to have a bloody fight. Even what can I do? Then drop on all fours like a dog because I cannot physically fight for my disability. There's an aeroplane going by. But the point is, it's not an aeroplane, it's a helicopter. And this is how they get to steal my signal as well on my phone, so that they can eventually steal my accounts. So I don't feel like I look like a zombie, even though I have gone through a lot of physical pain and emotional abuse by the very ones who have accused me of being an abuser, the abusers. So how is this out of control? How can my instructions break down into nothingness? And so when we have so-called God's people say don't talk about racism and don't talk about transgenderism, they're not God's people, they're false God's people. The more we talk about racism and transgenderism, the more awareness we bring how they can use class and statuses to cover up their crimes. Get away with murder, get away with kidnapping, and get away with a bumper sticker or a bummer to say you're a nobody because you have no human rights and no political rights and no political powers. So men, in my view, that are my opposite attraction is another book to be written on that I haven't even written, or a film, or a piece of music to sing, or a piece of poem to write, or something that I would do in the art, creating art, to explain what that means. Because there is normal opposite attraction, there is also abnormal opposite attraction. There is that which is God-given, and there is that which is devilish. So, for example, if someone gave you a sweetie, you would not expect it to be wrapped up in fancy, pretty paper and then open it and find poo on it, smeared with poo. And that's exactly what these smear campaigns do, to close down a business, to cancel a surgery operation, to destroy somebody's social construct or reputation, because we don't have that human right. We're abused of our human rights and our civil rights, and somehow we're against or we're anti transgenderism and we're anti-abortion. Actually, I just want abortion clinics to have an option for adoption. I want people to have a choice, but to not to at the same time mix up the liar, the deceiver, to say it is normal, it is their body, they can choose what they want. It is normal up to 2 weeks, then abortion is not normal. The point is, if you don't want the pregnancy for women, you shouldn't be having sex. You should abstain from sex. Abstinence. So, you'd be surprised because they want to have heaven, and they want to have a best of both worlds, hell and heaven. Jesus also warns that the prostitutes, the pimps, will find heaven, in other words, sexual pleasure, sexual healing, before God's people find sexual healing and sexual pleasure. So there is a normal type of healthy sexual pleasure and sexual healing. There is also abnormal type sexual pleasure and sexual healing. So they want a bit of both. They want a bit of heaven and a bit of hell at the same time. You can't have that. So after 2 weeks of pregnancy, and you have done everything to terminate that pregnancy, it's no longer a blob, it's no longer a fetus, it's a human baby. You're murdering. You're a murderer, you should be treated the same as a murderer. You're an adulterer, you should be treated the same as an adulterer. That means a death penalty for you if you're going to kill a child, an innocent child. But if you do it God's way and terminate the pregnancy God's way through more sex to cause miscarriage, or maybe have a bit of too much sex to cause a miscarriage, or you can have natural ways to cause a miscarriage or termination of pregnancy rather than have an abortion. So I'm pro-life and I am anti-abortion and I'm anti-LGBTQ. However, I have never in my life said that they should not have their right. They should make a law to close all abortion clinics. Because that's exactly how we identify who is who the witches and the wizards are. We identify them, who the abortionists are. And of course, we have to make policies, especially when we're looking at child abuse, to keep a close eye on them. Are they mixing the abnormal with normal? If they are, they're child abusers and they belong in prison. So it's our responsibility, and through law and government, to keep a close eye on them, asking the question, if it is a transgender or a LGBT or someone who has an abortion, and then in 2 or 3 years down the line they have a baby, they actually give birth to a baby, you have to keep a close eye on them, because they're the same as a murderer, they're the same as a child abuser and a child neglector. Child abuse. So we have to keep a close eye on them. So it's our responsibility to keep an eye. I mean, I hear somebody in my neighbourhood who's had an abortion called Emily. I don't know what she looks like because I was bedbound and housebound, severely disabled. I don't know what she looks like, but I could hear them mocking me, lurking under my window, shouting in the car park and in the area near my window, so I could hear them boasting in the fact that this woman called Emily had an abortion, and she's boasting in the fact that she has a pussycat, and they always call the cat to come round very stubbornly and rebelliously, that they have more freedoms and human rights compared to normal people and God's people. So I cannot hold my head up in holy pride versus them that can hold their head up in evil pride that they have more freedoms than me. And yet my child is kidnapped and their children are not touched. So that's not right. That's not equality. It goes against the Equality Act. So they targeted me for this abuse because they knew I didn't have any family and they knew I was a single woman. That's why they targeted me for the abuse, and they knew that there was nothing I could do about it for my poverty and claiming state benefits. That's another reason why they are not faithful to God and they do not fear God. Another interesting thing is, anyone that is possessed or obsessed by demon spirits can actually sense. They know what the truth is. It's so, how can I say, it gives goosebumps on my skin. It makes me, I'm almost close to being shocked as to how accurate their prophecies and predictions are, precisely because they have destroyed human rights and have more political powers compared to God's people and normal people. They actually know what the truth is. So the devil's people and the devil's lot who are obsessive and possessive know. The Bible says the children of the darkness are more intelligent than the children of the light. And I have witnessed that, almost close to being shocked, that they know when true Christmas is, according to the true account of Jesus, according to his genealogy and the study of how the community surrounded Jesus at the time of his birth, 2,000 years ago approximately, that it was recorded that his birth was in the summer, not in the winter, for example. So they know that, they instinctively know that, or they've done some research already. So they do know the truth, but they reject the truth, and they love the lie more than the truth. That is how there is this identity theft, to say that they're the ones who are abnormal, who have chosen to reject the truth or the lie. They love the lie more than the truth. In the society, a sick society, that expels and pushes away and makes me the outcast one, me the abnormal one, who is supposed to be the normal one, through tortures, torment, violation of my human rights and my privacy, violation of my information, freedom of information, that they've, if I report or take paperwork to say I want to have freedom of information, for example, I have a human right to do that, and I have some paperwork I can complete and say, I want my freedom of right to access this freedom of information. So I'm forced to access my freedom of information records, and at the same time, they're slapping me and spitting on my face, precisely for using their services for Freedom of Information Act. To attack me with new politicians and new political bodies. I don't want the dust to settle. Even if I am encouraged to allow the dust to settle. Some of us have no choice in the matter but to allow the dust to settle. They cannot say it's none of our business how far they go. They've gone quite far enough with what they're doing to destroy our society, dismantle everything, and ruin somebody's reputation based on a lie. And they're saying it's not quite enough. They want to do more. Get ready, get set, go. For their rat race. So according to my Christian perspective, all adulterers are LGBTQ. It's another category. Then you have those that want extraterrestrial intelligence, or have have this ET, extraterrestrial alien intelligence, where they are connected to the past, the present, and the future, where they can cherry pick and choose whatever they want. They've stolen that information from me and misappropriated it, and saying, so what was meant for a blessing, they turned it into a curse. To say, I can choose what I want to keep from my past and what I want to not keep from my past. It's my choice, and God will help me with that. So, how can a granddad or a grandma, for example, I need to pause the delivery something. So how can a grandma and a granddad, for example, have more human rights to distort information, to reject or to accept somebody in the community? And the answer is money. So the extreme capitalists who are that way inclined are actually as guilty as LGBTQ. They're the same as a lesbian or a pervert that only looks at the money rather than a person. How can someone, for example, say that their sandwiches and their cakes and their business is more tastier compared to someone who is not LGBTQ, those who have endorsed and accepted LGBT groups of people? I have oil in my hair, not water, it's oil. How can they actually say that this is wrong competition and a wrong, unfair challenge? Because again, they're mixing up the difference between that which is, even if it does taste more beautiful and better tasting, it does not necessarily mean that it hasn't got poison in it, or that it's not going to remove your human rights because you're mixing that which is normal compared to that which is abnormal. Number 3, how can someone that is going to say, so what, who is smug and a know-it-all, not be in the same category of arrogance, wickedness, sinner, stinky sinner, to say that even if they smell better, they have more perfumes and body lotions and more baths than me, it doesn't make them cleaner spiritually. And Jesus also said, you may wash yourself on the outside, but on the inside you're filthy, you're disgusting and dirty. Where Jesus was talking about washing a cup, for example, in the Holy Bible, the New Testament. So anyone who's arrogant and smug is the same as the LGBT, gay and lesbians. Number 4. So don't try and be too clever with me. Number 4. Looking for aliens, signals, radios, mixing, like there's breeding animals. There's also making a Frankenstein, or mixing human with animal. So we have a new type of creature. This DNA engineering and other things like that is the same as LGBT. It belongs to the same category of abnormality. Number 5. How can a computing analysis or signals for making censorship, accept an LGBTQ to look at my freedom of speech and say they're going to censor me, and say we're going to make a computer signal or analysis against her channel because she has spoken badly of LGBTQ, that she's saying it's not normal, it's biologically not normal. Of course it's not biologically normal, because they have used hormone replacements, surgery and other biologically modifying medical alterations. So of course they're not normal, they're abnormal. So because I have said that they're abnormal and I haven't put them in the normal category, that's why they would target me for abuse by using social media, computer signals and analysis, and also censorship. Number 6, how can they all around the world share the same plan through globalism, call themselves normal because they have accepted LGBTQ and transgenderism, and now they're going to tell us how to live our lives, how we can get our license for our jobs, how we should train our children and teach our children where we should go shopping. So they've hidden that in the globalist movement. They've hidden that. They've even appointed Prime Minister's secretary, and they've appointed LGBTQ so that they can appear as normal in the equal, fair society. How can that be a fair and equal society when you include that which is abnormal to normal? Number 7. So you have the globalists. They may call themselves something else in future. They may not be called globalists anymore. But it's a time to share the same plan through the agenda of making global money or economy, all money to be the same, where I have advised through the name of religion and through the name of God that even when the money is all the same in the future, so that we can support and help poor countries, and that's good news. But it is bad news when you force one language, which is an empire, which is what the English Empire did. Force only one language, and is bad news when they force the same bank. It has to be a separate bank, it has to be a separate language, even if it is the same currency, the same money. So how can they achieve that plan and their goal? It seems impossible. But with God, all things are possible, because we want to end global famine, and we want to end global poverty. So they may not call it globalists anymore, they'll call it something else. So ordinary people and their ordinary homes, livestock, farmers are destroyed by this globalist government that is saying we're forcing us to accept LGBT as normal. Number 7, how can they force mental health assessments and IQ ability, even though I'm not very well today, and they're saying my speech is intellectual or not intellectual, or they're going to philosophize my speech in some way or the other, and at the same time ignore the fact that it's not a normal day for me, it's an abnormal day. I don't have the support I'm supposed to have. I don't have the medication I'm supposed to have. And I don't have the freedoms I'm supposed to have. So how can they say that my circumstances are normal? I don't have family and friends that I'm supposed to have that are close to me. So they cannot say that my circumstances are normal, judging it based on my speech or based on my appearance. And yet they do anyway. So these are the 7 points I have looked at, the difference between right and wrong, and the difference between them. Also, it fits in with the evidence when you're studying who is attempting to mix up normality and abnormality should be judged as the criminal. And non-professional, false professionalism, then I do have a problem with that. And that's how I get my fists out, to say, my new surname, Hapunch, is not there for nothing. So they do hijack laws. They also rig systems for their own advantage, which is possessing and obsessing. How much more should God's people obsess and possess? We need more of God's people into these professional job titles, such as a lawyer, a judge, but a politician is a liar. So how can you be a normal Christian or religious person and be working in the job as a liar at the same time? I've just dropped my lid here somewhere. Got the lid back. It fell off. So you cannot be a professional individual and at the same time be a liar. You cannot be a politician representing God and be a liar. You have to choose one job or another job. You cannot have both. So maybe in future we shouldn't call it politicians. We could call them representatives of the government. God calls us ambassadors. That means royal representatives of God Almighty. So who is the government? I am the government. You're looking at her. Who is the royalty? I am the royalty. You're looking at her. Thanks to Jesus, God Almighty. I don't believe that God makes sickness. I don't believe that God makes individuals stupid. I don't believe that God would block freedom of thinking, freedom of movement, and freedom of speech, because naturally and supernaturally, there's a huge difference of what is normal or abnormal. So my disability is obviously abnormal. Down syndrome, or anyone who is blind, born blind or born deaf, or any other disability, obviously that's abnormal. Me not being able to probably give birth again after this year, and I would need artificial test tube baby. Again, this is not normal. So that's what I'm trying to process in my mind, to say, what is going to be very effective for me to improve my normality and reclaim my normality that Satan has stolen from me? And to some religious people, who are false religious people, will be appalled and terrified of the thought of using the devil's tools. So say, I can now go into the office and I would not want to choose the sex of my baby. It's either a girl or a boy. But I would want to probably use Satan's tools to look at artificial, insert some type of, it looks like an injection. It's not an injection, in order for me to be pregnated. And if that doesn't work, then I would have an adoption. Just adopt a baby, or he has young children already, so I would just be using I would just be having his children, right? We would be a family, because that's what's the normal thing to do for a young couple. I don't see myself as an old woman, even if I've got grey hairs on my head. So I'm treating my hair. It has been damaged because I had dyed it. Again, dyeing your hair is not normal. So if I want to have blonde hair, ginger hair, or any other hair colour, I would just buy a wig for a party or for fun. So many false religious people will say, don't use the devil's tools, because there'll be consequences for that. They'll be chasing you, and they want you to pay even more money because you're using the devil's tool. And you say, yeah, so what? So what? If the devil is more clever and it has more access to normality and health, of course I'm going to go and try and reclaim that which Satan has stolen from the saints, even if it means that it's a life risk and that I would have to pay extra for it. Because it's stolen my freedom right and my freedom of thought and my freedom of speech in the first instance. It's mine in the first instance that it has stolen it. So this is what annoys me, also makes my blood boil, when you have false religious people saying, don't go there and don't do that, don't listen to demons. I don't like listening to demons. It's not normal. And I don't listen to demons. But I do want to have access of my information, my freedoms that it has stolen. That's my attitude. So in closing this videos, I'm going to look at 4 more points in closing. Also, what the globalists are doing is saying you cannot call them natives anymore. You have to call them locals. Because the locals know more about the environment compared to the natives, which is another lie mixed in with the truth. Number 2, does the woke society understand the weather as much as prophecies and predictions that they have made? And the answer is probably yes, because they spend more times outdoor compared to God's people who are spending more times in prisons. Number 3, is instinct your sixth sense or your third eye, which we call the sixth sense? Your human instinct as a wild human, is it a new intelligence? Is it a new philosophy? That's the question. No, because obviously someone who knows their times table, their mathematics, their physics and their science is more intelligent, intellectual. They have an uprising, but they're more intelligent. They have a higher IQ. Obviously, compared to a wild person living in the wild who only uses the bow and arrow as their weapons, compared to those who are using bombs and other weapons, obviously more advanced in technology and weaponization. So obviously they're more advanced in their intellectualism, not instincts. Even if I had the Holy Spirit use an invisible gun to kill someone, it's not the same as a physical gun to kill someone. A spiritual gun, they're saying, is the new intelligence, is the new... Instinct has become the new intelligence. Or the spiritual juju. Or even God's ability to kill someone without a gun, without a weapon. But that's God. How can you put God in the same equation as human beings? Dumb. That's dumb. You cannot call human beings gods. If God chooses to kill someone by using saints, or as example as Moses, that's God doing the killing. Is God genocidal? Yes. Is God racist? Yes. So that's God Almighty, whose thoughts are higher than our thoughts and whose intelligence is higher than our intelligence. So that's another point to make that correction. So obviously intelligence is higher than instinct because it's based on education. Instincts is not based on education. Instincts is based on, well, instincts can be based on education, but it's based on a spirituality. So they're 2 different types, and they're not the same. So because they're not the same or identical, you cannot put them in the same equation or equality. Likewise with LGBT sex compared to the normal sex, the heterosex. And so you cannot put them in the same equilibrium, same brackets, or say they're the same definition. It's not normal. Number 4, it's embarrassing when people come to acknowledge how to churn cheese or make yogurt, and how things do not mix. Some say part of yogurt or milk is best than the other part. So one man's food, another man's poison. One human's food, another human's poison. As in my case, I had chosen to have more yogurts compared to milks because milk will make me swollen, and I have some type of lactose intolerance. This, likewise, we separate the transgenderism from heterosexuals, similar to separating what we want from the milk, what we don't want from the milk, separating the oil from the water. Both have cleansing properties, but they're not both the same, so we cannot say that they are both the same. We're then saying it is normal, and I'm saying it's not normal to say that it is both the same, because obviously they're separated, and it's dumb and stupid of society to do that. That's my point. In closing, why do waters have a foamy splash when the river has broken at the end? So symbolically, that foamy splash at the end of water or the river or ocean, is that the same as the LGBTQ? The same as evil horses, where the majority of the evil horses are evil, are an enemy of God? It's very rare. So the majority of that's why I said we should introduce burgers made out of horse meat. Why do we always have cow's meat? Let's have some horse meat in our burgers. So probably it's the case that the majority are wicked and evil animals, as much as the majority of human race are wicked and human race. Because they would always point your finger at you and say it's your fault that something has gone wrong, you were jinxed, you were bullied, it's your fault that you didn't please the narcissist in your nest. So in closing, for example, I know why I deter a narcissist. It cannot have what it wants. That's why it doesn't like me. That's why it wants to punch me in the face, spit in my face and fight me, because it knows I will not allow it to get what it wants, even if it tortures me. So I'm the living witness for God, and God is my witness. That's why when the narcissist knows it cannot get what it wants, as in the case of me and Roger, he wanted to pack his suitcases and move in with me if I satisfied his desires. Of course, I'm not going to satisfy his desires, because most of his desires, if he was to do a test, intellectual test and separate test for his instincts, it is evil, wicked, possessed and obsessed by the devil. So of course I have said no. I have my boundaries, I have my limitations. He didn't consider, he loved himself too much. Or another type of narcissist hates himself too much. It's its own worst enemy. So he's going from one extreme to the other. And so I cannot have my help and healing having somebody as a narcissist, one extreme to the other, attack me, my personal and private space, and get away with it. And they somehow think it's my fault because I let him in. And I'm saying, well, this individual, who's Roger was supposed to be as an uncle figure, a granddad figure, he was not supposed to be my lover or my married partner. And yet he made it his sexual assault and violation on me. He made it seem like we were engaged. We were not engaged. We were not even dating. How dare he call himself my fiancé? That's madness. Oh. So this is what the narcissist wants. It's a thief. It's an evil thief. It's an abuser. And it does neglect those that it loves because it expects too much from people. So you have the human animal curse on them, which is perversion. You have the curse, which is a human god and goddess. So what is perversion? It is that which mixes truth with the lies. It is that which mixes abnormality with normality. And there's other definition of what perversion is, and that's what he is. And he thinks there's nothing wrong with it. So this cannot wait until the end of April. But in conclusion, respecting my elders is important to me, but not when it comes to abuse. Political abuse, professional abuse, or any other abuse of power. So that I let him in my home, it was because he's known me since I was 18 and I was friends with his wife. That's why I let him in my home. I also knew that he had an affair and that there was an allegation of him being a rapist. I wanted to find out if he really wasn't if he was a rapist, and the answer is no. It is the most arrogant individuals who are actually rapists. And so that's how I close my video now, as Maya Maria Marina, and my new name is Mima. In closing, it is middle of April 2023.